while an urgent change takes the show into a whole new direction in its best episode yet. Hey guys, here for Victoria, Series 1, Episode 4, The Clockwork Prince, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. I've really been enjoying the show so far, but mainly because of the way that last week's episode ended, because last week's episode kind of hinted that we were going a bit of a different direction. You know, the first 3 episodes we had a lot of, Melbourne, Victoria, so much of them knowing each other, and finally at the end of Episode 3, we now have Albert, and that definitely did prove to be quite a struggle in this episode, and this for me was easily the best episode since the first one. I really did love this episode overall. I thought there was some really compelling stuff going on here. Not that interesting of a subplot, but other than that, I really did enjoy this episode, and Sir John was actually nowhere to be found. He wasn't in this episode, which was good, because I haven't really been enjoying him that much, but let's just get into it, because I definitely do want to talk about this episode. So, we see, after Albert's dramatic entrance in the previous episode, Victoria is unimpressed by his stiff demeanor, and although it hasn't gone unnoticed by her that he's, very handsome, and that she actually would find him someone that, is somewhat attractive, after viewing the same as the first postage stamp, the Queen finds humor in the fact that people will have to lick her face to affix them to envelopes, and Albert, on the other hand, finds nothing humorous in this, instead marveling in the ingenuity of the invention. It's clear the pair approach things in very different ways and find each other's attitudes frustrating, and that's probably the most compelling thing about this entire episode, is how different these two really are. Victoria is very laid back, she's very childlike, and that's because she is a teenager. I mean, remember, Victoria is only 15 in this show. She's only about 15 or 16, and if I'm not mistaken, I think she's only supposed to be like 15 or 16 at this time, at least, and you get that sense, she definitely feels very childlike, very much like, she's not really taking things as seriously. Only when things need to be taken seriously, she's just very carefree. Albert, on the other hand, is very, very serious, and he knows when things need to be taken seriously, and in spite of all this, it's clear that they both are attracted to each other, and you do see it throughout the episode. They kind of don't want to, admit that they actually do like each other, and this leads to a great number of backhanded compliments and barbed taunts as they wrestle with the conflict between desire and duty, and they spend more time in each other's company. They can't even walk around the palace grounds without them clashing over the trivial matter of preferring gardens or forests. Just really funny stuff like that. There was actually some really great humor in this episode, and that's something that actually does elevate us. That was actually very funny. A lot of this episode, the stuff that Albert and Victoria are arguing over is completely ridiculous. It really doesn't have much to do with anything. There's really not much of a reason for them to be arguing about it, and I did find that to be quite funny throughout the entire episode. I definitely did enjoy a lot of the humor here. But basically, we see that as the pair spend more time in each other's company, Albert starts to get under Victoria's skin, providing her with some fresh perspective on his fractured relationship with her mother. Because again, we know that these two haven't really seen eye to eye. They did have that one really great moment last week, but besides that, these two really have not been on each other's side. And I do like the way that Albert is kind of helping Victoria with that in a way that Melbourne can't really. I actually really did like that. So after organizing a dinner of dancing for the visitor, Princess Victoria finds herself in the center of what could possibly be the most provocative and highly charged waltz with her suitor. The shy young man confesses that he's always been nervous about dancing, but with her, he doesn't really feel that fear. And this was kind of a cute scene. I like the way that they actually were bonding over this, and he also shares how the gardenia that Victoria's pinned to her dress reminds him of his mother, to which Victoria insists that he must have the flower, and he symbolically places the bloom by his heart, and they really did take the time, even though we know these two, are supposed to be together, they do take the time to really show who Albert really is as a character. This is someone who lost his mother. He's kind of had to fend for himself. He's taking things very seriously, and he's very shy as well. He's not very high on himself, and I like seeing a prince that's not very confident, and a prince that's more reserved and quiet. We don't really get to see that a ton in these kind of shows, and I really like seeing that here. I like that he's not this celebrity, and that he's not someone who loves to be called a prince. In fact, I think if it was Albert's way, he doesn't see himself as a prince. He sees himself as a normal guy, and I definitely really did like seeing that. So he places the bloom by his heart, and at this point, there's a huge shift in the balance between them. The flowers have been a gift from Lord Melbourne that he'd grown at Brockett Hall, but her willingness to let it go suggests her reliance on Melbourne is beginning beginning to lessen as she finds her own strength and confidence not only as a queen, but more importantly as a woman. So we definitely can see that things are kind of going south with Lord Melbourne. We'll get to Lord Melbourne in a second, but one of the big parts of this episode has to do with Albert's brother Ernest, we see, because you know how he's very stiff and reserved. His brother Ernest is the complete opposite. He's poking fun that perhaps he should be the one to pursue her, instead much to King Leopold's dissatisfaction. You know, he is not at all into that at all. He does not think that Ernest should be the one to do that. We know that King Leopold wants these two, you know, to be together, and it's clear the lawning stares the prince cast in the distance of the diminutive monarch that while he has been summoned to London by his uncle, he genuinely finds her attractive, but doesn't believe that she will feel the same way. He really feels that Victoria is not going to like him, and we can tell she does like him. There's just a lot of things they don't see eye to eye on. That's just because they were raised very differently, and as Leopold attempts to talk him out of returning to Germany, he points to the people who assume that he's been rejected by Victoria, but if he were to stay, then there's more chance of him becoming king, and that's something that Albert is genuinely interested in, to which Albert replies that he would simply be the queen's husband, and he doesn't see himself as a king. He doesn't want to be king. He just wants to be the queen's husband, and he doesn't think that he'd really do anything. So as the episode progresses, it's clear the stiff outward demeanor that Albert exudes masks a deeper thinker who sees the world far beyond the walls of whatever place he's standing in. He's fast, and I like seeing this. You know, he's fascinated by art, music, revolutionary change to how the world works, such as the introduction of the postage stamp, and incredibly unsure of himself when it comes to women that he's attracted to. You know, he really doesn't know how to feel around them, and again, it just gives him this insecurity that I really like seeing. So during the visit to Windsor Castle, we see that Victoria, she goes to Windsor, and we see perhaps the turning point of Victoria in terms of her affection for Prince Albert. They're actually very playful with each other, where she pokes fun at him, which he finally understands, and he impacts details about losing his mother at a young age, and their connection's deepening, but due to Albert's bluntness, they have yet another falling out over her friendship with Lord Melbourne, which leads to her concluding that the young prince has no interest in becoming her husband. He just kind of wants to talk to her. He's kind of laying her down. She really feels this isn't really going to go that great, so I really do like the direction that this went, where they're both very much denying what's going on, but in reality, they both really do care about each other, and I really like seeing that. So, during the visit to Windsor Castle, the Queen notices the difference between the two of them, her with Albert opening up about losing his mother as they walk through, and the pair share a tender moment where they almost kiss, and as Victoria's beloved dog Dash is injured during their walk, Albert then springs into action, showing his compassionate side, but despite his gallant deed, the pair then squabble over what he perceives to be Victoria's ignorance about the suffering of her own people, and her reliance on Lord M. And you can understand, you know, where he's coming from here, why he feels, because, yeah, Victoria is kind of ignorant, you know, she doesn't seem to care. Well, she cares about her people, but it seems to be more of an afterthought, and it's clear he's jealous of the connection that the pair have. He doesn't have that with anyone, you know, he wants to have that with Victoria, but he can see Victoria and Lord Melbourne are so close, he's quite jealous of it. He just doesn't know how to make Victoria see that he's attracted to her and should be the one to win her affections. And again, I like that, lack of confidence that, you know, Albert exudes in this episode. It's just something that we haven't seen a ton in these kind of shows, and I definitely did like seeing that. But Lord Melbourne in this episode really does get the short end of the stick, I have to say. I mean, Rufus Sewell is great as this character, and he did such a great job here, because with Albert's presence causing turbulence for the status quo that Victoria has fought too hard to establish since ascending the throne, she repeatedly turns to her trusted Lord Melbourne, firstly using her Prime Minister to vent her frustrations over her cousin's annoying ways, and secondly as a crutch who feel when her feelings for Albert start to change. So Melbourne continues to support Victoria with unwavering devotion, you know, because that's just what he does. He very much cares about her, and he even agrees to travel to Windsor Castle for dinner at Victoria's insistence, and after suddenly decides it would be a good idea to take Albert and Ernest there for a visit because he knows that he's not the one in the running. I think deep down he does want to be Victoria, but he knows, you know, that he's not in the cards for her. There's no version where they end up together. It's just not happening. And during a conversation with the Queen about Oliver Twist, he denounces the novel, saying he has no issue to associate people of that nature, so why would he want to read about them? And Albert challenges his notion, pointing out that at least Dickens is in touch with the troubles that people are facing. So he begins to see the attraction between the pair when Victoria seeks Lord Melbourne's advice over her dilemma with Albert, confessing that Albert thinks that she's too friendly with her advisor, but that she desperately wants to make him smile for her. And his stoic response that if it's what she wants, then there shouldn't be an issue. And remember clever that he says that. If it's what you want, then, this shouldn't be a problem. Again, he wants what's best for her, and before quietly confessing that only a fool could turn her down. There's no one that really could actually turn her down. He knows that so many people love Victoria. There's no reason why she shouldn't have a nice relationship, and I love the way that Lord Melbourne supports her and things like that, but it's definitely sad to see Lord Melbourne kind of realize that he needs to drift away from her, that he can't really be with Victoria as much, and Albert and Ernest visit Parliament, and he sets in motion the idea that Victoria relies on him much less now that she's found her feet as queen. She doesn't need him anymore, and it's a very sad moment, and, we really did care about Lord Melbourne. I've cared about him a lot throughout the show. He's done a great job here, but the fact is, he can't stick around for that much longer. His retirement is on the horizon for him. We've known since the beginning of the show that he was going to leave at some point. He's wanted to leave his job for a while, and the truth has been stretched somewhat in favor of the unsuitor, feeling comfortable in his courting of the monarch, and basically, much to his relief, Ernest and Lord Melbourne share a look, both men knowing that, this isn't really for them, and it's a sad moment, but you definitely get the sense that we're not going to see Lord Melbourne a lot. I don't know if he's gone from the show. I'm sure we're going to see him next week, but I feel like after next week, he's kind of done. I don't know if we're really going to see him a ton, I have to say, so I don't know what's going to happen with Lord Melbourne. It was kind of sad to see him go. I love seeing Rufus Sewell on the show. It's a hard realization that he has to come to, but it's a very inevitable conclusion that really was kind of, how it was going to be from the start. I think he knew he could never really be with her, and as much as we want that to happen, that's not what happened. As we know, Albert and Victoria need to end up together, and I like the way the show is sticking to that. I know a lot of people were upset that Lord Melbourne and Victoria, were friendly with each other, but I like that the show is taking the choice to keep Victoria and Albert together, because that, of course, is what happened, and that's the story that we know. Royal pairing of Victoria and Albert in the wake of Lord John's sudden departure, and I'm glad that John's gone. I really was not a fan of him, I have to say. I just thought he was really cartoony, and Victoria, however, is keenly aware of their tactics and makes it clear to both that she believes her and Albert are not well suited for each other, and King Leopold continues to dig at Lord Melbourne while flaunting his nephew in front of Victoria at every opportunity he can, just to show that they actually should be together. It's clear the Prime Minister is already well aware of the developing attraction in the midst of behind-the-scenes plotting, and Albert prepares to leave due to his belief that the pair aren't a good match to each other, and his brother actually tries to talk him out of it, and I like the way that Ernest came to this realization that Victoria and him, again, they can't be together. Victoria and Albert, they're the ones that are meant to be together. This isn't his thing to do, and he makes it clear that he can see their attraction, even if Albert doesn't believe that he's capable of loving someone like Victoria and that she should love someone like him, and that he has something that makes him lovable. He does have it, and King Leopold's back to badgering Victoria about the marriage, leading her to confessing that even if she were to ask him, she doubts that he'd actually accept. So Leopold points out that if she asked at this point, at least she know that Albert's answer came from the heart, but it's unclear whether this is a genuine answer or just another way to coerce her into doing what he really wanted her to do. Did he really want, does he really believe that these two are meant to be together, or is this just him getting what he wants? Because we've known from the start that he wanted these two to be together, so does he really care, or what's really going on there? And before it gets to Yang, there's one other thing to talk about, which the subplot in this episode I really was not that into, I have to say, but Skecker is visited by a called Eliza, who coerces her into stealing to help her pay rent, hinting that there may be even more to who she may really be, and the assistant dresser later takes a diamond hairpin from the Queen's dressing room, which she instantly regrets, and later, while helping Victoria get ready for dinner, she surreptitiously returns, I am clearly having rethought her actions, and instead, she gives Eliza the lace collar from her uniform to sell instead. So the Queen notices the absence of the it, and insists that she takes some of hers to replace the ones that she lost, which she then takes to Eliza, who it transpires has a baby. They talk. It's clear there's a secret surrounding the baby's existence, but that both girls are doing what they're doing to protect the little one. So I don't really care that much about this. It's only because of the fact that it's the only thing that didn't focus on Victoria and Albert. All their stuff was so compelling. Their stuff just wasn't that interesting. However, that really does make up once we get to the ending. Which, as great as the episode was, I don't think the episode would be nearly as good if it wasn't for the ending, which is, I think, as perfect as the show really could end, because Victoria, she has her decision made. She knows she wants to be with Albert, but she is under the belief that he's going to say no and that he doesn't want to be with her, and she needs him to pop the question. And they're clearly both nervous around one another, but desperate to be admitting how they really feel. So she stumbles over her proposal. The tables turn once more, with Albert teasing her that he will only say yes if he can kiss her, and Victoria finally gets him to smile smile for her, and Albert finally accepts before sealing with the kids. It's clear they're both fully accepting of their destiny. They're realizing what they have to do. And rather than being, he even talks about how he doesn't see this as a marriage of convenience. He sees this as something that's actually more, something that is genuine love, something that they've grown to care about each other throughout the show. Maybe in the beginning of the show, they had a lot of differences that they didn't really see eye to eye, but they really are meant for each other. They're meant to be together, and because of that, they should, in fact, go through with this marriage. And that gives Albert the confidence to say yes. Finally, they're going through this marriage, and it is the perfect way to end a great episode. But let's just get into this episode and where I think we're going to go from here. So really, this was probably the most eventful episode so far. I really like where this episode took us, and I thought there was some very interesting stuff going on here. And it looks like next week we're jumping right into the wedding, which isn't a surprise. We've known that this is something that King Leopold has been plotting for a long time. He's been wanting this wedding to go on. Victoria and Albert obviously are going to get married. There's no sort of will they, won't they sort of thing. We know they're going to get married. I'm interested in seeing really what's going to happen there. And will Albert get a little bit more confident? It looks like Victoria's kind of getting him to come out of his shell a bit. He's starting to realize, I think, really what his true purpose is, and that he can be a good king, even though he doesn't want to be king. I think it's interesting where we're going with that. So is he going to be king? What's really going to happen there? And is he going to get that confidence that he really does need to be king? Because right now he doesn't really have any. And I do like the direction that that's going. I think overall that's very interesting. Probably the most heartbreaking thing this episode was Lord Melbourne. Seeing Lord Melbourne realize that he can't be with Victoria, even though I think in his heart he wants to be. It was quite sad to see. I mean, they've done a very good job of getting these two together. They've done a very good job of showing that these two have a genuine friendship, but he just he's not really needing her life anymore. As much as she does care for him, the care she once had, it's not really there. I think she's starting to see, that Prince Albert is a great prince and that he is really great for her, and that sure, he's not a perfect guy, but he's gone through just as many hardships as she has. He's very insecure of himself, and she is someone who can help him build up his confidence. In many ways, they really do need each other. Victoria needs Albert in the sense that, she needs a prince and she needs someone to wed, and that's something that gets that done. But she also needs someone to talk to him, someone she can confide in and actually trust and knows will not leave her at the last minute. Now, while Melbourne did do a good job with talking her, out of things and getting to playing to her strengths and things like that and, talking to her, Albert understands her better just because the fact that he actually has gone through a lot of what she has, and that he's very insecure, and that he doesn't have any regrets about leaving. He's not as committed to her as, say, Melbourne is. So that kind of gives us a reason why these two should be together. I think it's very interesting overall. I really love the way they got us to know this character. I love the character that plays Albert. The guy who plays Albert is such a great actor. Thomas M. Hughes, I think his name is. He's a great actor. I love what he's doing on this show, and I'm happy that they took a while to actually introduce him. I like that we got all of him in this episode. I thought they did a really good job developing him. He really was fantastic. I love what he did here. I thought all that stuff was very well done. And then King Leopold, King Leopold's really getting what he wants here with finally letting this marriage happen. Did he actually think these two are meant for each other, or did he just kind of want it to happen? You don't really know what's going to happen there. Lord John's disappeared. I don't know if he's coming back, but he seems to have disappeared. I hope he doesn't come back. I really was never that big of a fan of him, so we'll have to see what happens there. Other than that, my only real complaint with this episode is the subplot with Skeckert. I'm just not very compelled. I don't really care about this whole thing going on with the baby and whatnot and what's going on there. I just don't really care. I know the show wants me to care, but it just doesn't. I don't really care that much, honestly. I think, I get what they're trying to do, that these girls are trying to protect the baby, but because of everything going on with Prince Albert and Victoria, that whole plot of the show was a lot more interesting to me. I cared a lot more about what was going on there than what was going on with Skeckert. I just don't really care that much about the plot. Other than that, guys, this was easily the best episode since the first one. I really did love this episode overall. I can't wait to see where the show's going to go. We're now halfway through the season. There's a lot of potential for where we could go from here, but I am definitely going to Victoria, Season 1, Episode 4, The Clockwork Prince, a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. I would have gone a little bit higher, but if it hadn't been for that subplot, I would have loved the episode a lot more. They did an incredible job of developing this relationship, getting us on board Victoria and Albert, but also, of course, the heartbreaking conclusion that Melbourne had to go to. This episode really did have it all. It showed how well the show has built these relationships. It shows how well the show knows its characters, and it really seems like now the show is becoming what we want it to be. The first 3 episodes, they were good, but this is more what I want the show to be. I hope the show stays consistent. We have 4 episodes left. There's so many places they can go with it, and I can't wait to see really where the show's going to go from here. You definitely get the sense the show's changing a bit because we're getting rid of some characters. You know, we're meeting some more, such as Prince Albert. Lord Melbourne's not going to be as much a part of the show anymore. So the show definitely is changing in that regard, and I can't wait to see the way the show evolves and goes in this relationship and where we're really going to go from here. In 8 episodes, there's a lot they can do, and there's a lot that can happen in 4 episodes, but there's also a lot that can't happen. So I'm definitely interested in seeing where they're going to go. This definitely was the game-changing episode for the show, and I can't wait to see where we end up going from here. So over, guys, the most guys saw this episode of Victoria. Loved your thoughts on it. I really did love this episode overall. But that was just a video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will either be for one of 2 things, either Supergirl or a series of Unfortunate Events. I don't know if I'll have time to review a series of Unfortunate Events. I might not have time till tomorrow. But either way, I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.